We're telling you earlier on, we have an exclusive interview with the Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, Soipan Tuya, who is a two-time woman rep for Narok County. She reminds me. So she's been in the business for a while. Thank you for joining us, Madam Secretary.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thanks for your time. Real quick, let me ask you, the lifting of the ban on logging has led to a surge in the cutting of trees. Why did the government make this move?
First of all, Jeff, I don't think the lifting of the ban has led to the cutting down of trees.
Really?
Yes. Let me just let Kenyans know that the logging that we are talking about, or the lift of the ban, applies to plantation forests in this country. We have a total of 2 million hectares of gazetted government forests in Kenya, and only 150,000 hectares of that is commercial plantations, the subject of the ban, the subject of the lifting of the ban. There has been a concern with the rise in illegal activities happening in this country, and it's visible everywhere, and we are taking very stern measures on that. I would therefore say that there is no direct correlation with the illegal activities happening in our forests with the lifting of the ban. And just to let Kenyans also understand that the ban that we are talking about was one imposed in 2018 by government, and it only applied to the commercial plantations forests that I'm talking about, the 150,000 hectares, and community forests. And what informed that moratorium then was, again, the issue of rampant destruction of our ecosystems. And therefore, the ban was put in place to give way for measures to curb the illegal logging, and to enhance the enforcement capacity of the Kenya Forest Service.
Who monitors the cutting down process?
The Kenya Forest Service, which is under my ministry. And there is a felling plan for these plantation forests that I'm talking about. And at any one time, we cannot do beyond 5,000 hectares in a year. It is also instructive to note that the plantation areas is covered with exotic trees. So the logging does not apply to indigenous forests in this country. It's only the exotics. The exotics have a lifespan because they are planted for purposes of wood production, you know, and wood products. So the felling plan allows for felling 5,000 hectares every year. Then by the time you're moving to the next 5,000 hectares, it gives room for replanting. And it is a very systemic process. Yeah. Sustainable, to say. Okay,
Kenya is already way under the UN recommended percentage, like forest cover, which is supposed to be, what, 10%, right?
Our tree cover, the threshold given by the Constitution is 10%,
right,
minimum. We are at 12%.
Right now?
Yes. But we have set a very ambitious target for ourselves, which is to move to 30% in the next 10 years, by 2032.
Is that going to be possible?
It is possible. As the CS in charge of that process, I know it is possible. The reality of it is that it is not for the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry to plant 15 billion trees, which is the target we have. My key role, or the key role of the ministry, is really to coordinate a multi-sectoral pool of stakeholders who need to do this. And Jeff, this is the responsibility of every individual Kenyan. And the role of the ministry is to coordinate. The plan is that we have earmarked specific targeted areas for where this planting will be done. We have targeted schools. We have targeted arid and semi-arid lands, which form the biggest chunk of land that is available for planting. We are targeting individual farmers because, Jeff, the tree growing strategy for the country is not your typical pastime of planting trees. It needs to speak to the food security needs of this country. It needs to speak to the job creation needs of the country. It needs to carry a value chain approach to it. And therefore, when I talk about our farmers, we want to interest our farmers. And again, this ties to the question on the commercial plantations that there is a bit of a hue and cry about the lifting of the ban. We must focus on our commercial forestry sector in this country. As it is right now, we have a huge deficit of wood in the country. By statistics, we have a deficit of 15 million metric tons, which is, if we continue the way we are continuing without really casting or recasting the commercial forestry sector, we will move to a deficit of about 24 million metric tons. And that deficit is filled by imports from other countries. That's why we are importing toothpick in Kenya.
Yeah.
Why do we need to do that? Yet we can augment our commercial forestry sector, create jobs for our youth, and create revenue.
Yeah, but those 15...
But it has to be done sustainably.
Those 15 billion or 20 billion trees, the plan to plant them, isn't that a little too ambitious?
The 15 billion? If you even divide it by the head count of Kenyans, it's only 30 trees for you, Jeff, the whole year.
Yeah, and the 1-year-old, are they going to plant a tree?
Not 1 year old.
Yeah, you said
but,
if you divide it by Kenyans.
We are institutionalizing tree growing within our CBC system, within our education system. I think a child of 5 years, 6 years can plant a tree.
They can plant, but are they going to water it? How long? Are they going to take care of it?
That is why we have to have a whole government approach, whole community, because as you say, it is moving from just planting to actually growing and nurturing to maturity. And we have embarked on a very aggressive seedling production plan. We have already established 18 seed centers across the country, because for us to meet the target of 15 billion trees, we have to do 1,000 metric ton of seed, which translates to 20 billion seedlings in the country. So the seed centers, which are in different parts of this country, different counties, we are involving ministries, departments, and agencies of government, and specifically targeting with those that would have ready labor. The correctional services, for example, our NYS, our army are really coming in to help in propagation of seedlings. And we want to ensure that 30% of the seedlings that we produce is in the form of fruit trees.
A moment ago, you said that our forest cover in the country is about 12%, but there was a report by the National Forest Assessment released in 2022 that said the forest cover was 8.83%. Which is which?
That is forest cover, Jeff. That is forest cover 8.8%. Tree cover is what is given a threshold of 10% by the Constitution, and we are at 12.3%.
What's the difference between forest cover and tree cover?
Tree cover is a part of forest cover. I mean, for forests in the country, it's a concentration of trees. But for individual counting of trees goes up to what you have in your farm. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if you saw that.
So the tree cover is higher than the forest
cover. Yes. So forest cover 8.8, tree cover
12.3.
Okay, a moment ago we did a story on Lake Baringo and the rising levels of water. Yep. And the people haven't been able to return home in, 26 months. Your thoughts on that, your reaction?
Let me say, Jeff, as a minister in charge of environment, climate change and forestry, I have 3 key priority areas. One is the ecosystem restoration, which is the 15 billion trees we are talking about. Number 2 is climate action. And number 3 is sustainable waste management. On the climate action, I think if there were people who are thinking that the climate story is a fallacy. There is no, I think we are losing any person who still thinks that there is no climate crisis in the world. And it is more visible for us here in Kenya, in Africa. The rising lakes, the droughts that have not been witnessed in many years. And that is why Kenya, through the leadership of His Excellency President Ruto, is taking the lead in calling the globe to attention in the way we have done our climate action. We have a climate summit coming in September in a few weeks. It's the Africa Climate Summit, but we are inviting the world to Nairobi to rethink the way we have dealt with climate action. For a long time, we have had, Kenya is party and many other countries to the Paris Agreement, which calls on states to undertake certain obligations to decarbonize and to, deal with the emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, which translate into the catastrophic effects of climate change that we are seeing today. And we have had conference of parties, the COPs that we have gone year in, year out. We will soon be going to Dubai for COP28. But the science keeps telling us, because the climate action is largely informed by science through the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that if we continue with the status quo without rerouting the way we are undertaking climate action, there will be no one to attend COP in the next few years to come, because the globe is warming faster every other day. So it means that the discussions that we keep having in the COPs are not working. They are not effective. We might be reducing ourselves to talk shops as we go to the one COP after another. So the climate summit that we are calling the world to Nairobi is to say we need to rethink. And one way to rethink is that Africa has for a long time projected itself as this victim that is disproportionately affected by climate change, which is true. Africa has projected itself as the continent without the resources to undertake climate action, which is true. But so what? What do? We want to tell the world that Africa can no longer continue to be portrayed as a victim. We indeed have a solution that we have to offer the world in the form of the natural resources that remain on, we have not exploited our natural resources to the potential that we have. One is the renewable energy that we have. If our renewable energy capacity, and it's not only Kenya, many other countries in Africa, if our renewable energy capacities and potential is met with the technology from the West, is met with the capital that is required, to undertake green industrialization, we will decarbonize the world. Africa is a continent that has arable land available. It's unmatched by any other continent. This is where we can produce en masse, the raw materials for biofuels, for us to engage in sustainable, aviation fuels, clean cooking technologies. But we want that to be matched with resources, with innovation, with technology. Africa is a carbon sink of the world. We have the forests. Look at the Congo forest and, Gabon and these other countries. And the whole discussion about, the carbon sinking, Africa is the leading. So if we bring that discussion here to Nairobi to tell the world that because Africa has these resources and the financing architecture that has been going on year in, year out has not been serving to help Africa exploit its resources. We now want that restructured so that it can have, some form of fairness, accessibility, and the scale at which we need to move, because we are being told that we are now moving from global warming to global melting.
Absolutely.
Yep.
In fact, I want to talk more about that after the break, Madam CS, because the President himself has called on the scrapping of these conferences, these COPs, COP28, COP20, all these, is called for the scrapping of them and a rethinking of the whole agenda.
Yep.
I want to talk more about that after the break. And also the Lake Turkana wind power. What happened to that? Is that still operational? Don't answer that now. We're talking to Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, Soipan Tuya, on Sunday Live exclusively today on Matters Environment and Climate Change. Stay with us. Keep tweeting at Koinange Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya, the hashtag Sunday Live. Sunday Live takes a break. We'll be back. In the meantime, here's what's coming up.